In 2009, rail fans on YouTube searching for Norfolk Southern Conrail videos bore witness to the birth of ravenhawk6910. Both of them disliked the video. After a 2-year hiatus, ravenhawk6910 resumed uploading videos, sometimes if the Wi-Fi that was slower than molasses permitted it. After 5 years on YouTube, Ravenhawk finally got his stuff together and finally started uploading blog videos on a month-to-month basis with occasional railfan videos in between. After 4 more years of continuous video upload grinding, Ravenhawk6910 finally surpassed the 1,000 subscriber mark. And now, 10 years after the initial start date, Ravenhawk6910 is still here and is still around today for the displeasure of all rail fans and model railroaders alike. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here he is, the wonderful, the beautiful, the hilarious, the man who's doing his own introduction. It's Ravenhawk6910. Greetings everyone and welcome. I'm Ravenhawk6910 and this is my 10-year anniversary special Q&A. A lot of you guys posted questions down in my previous video for stuff for me to answer, and I appreciate all of those. Sorry that I'm not going to be able to answer all of them, and a lot of them were also the same question asked by different people, so I'm just going to lump those all up into one answer depending on what question it is. But let's not delay any further. Let's get started with the first question.
What got you hooked on being a rail fan?
I think like most of us, from my generation at least, most of us got started into the hobby by watching Thomas and Friends growing up. And also my mom would take me down to the Amtrak station to see the Crescent coming in, which was the New York to New Orleans passenger train that ran through my hometown. Because it was cheap entertainment. And I guess from going down there many times, and I also got a few cab rides as a kid, and I guess just through all of that, it just sort of snowballed into this big thing that we have today. I've always been obsessed with trains, as many people like to label it, but I grew up with them. You know, they're just great. I just love being a rail fan, and while I don't think I'll ever work for the railroads, I still really enjoy it. I love supporting historical societies and museums, model railroad clubs. It's just great, and it's such a diverse hobby. There's so many things you could do within the world of being a model railroader or a rail fan, and you know, you could be into one side of the hobby, whereas someone could be into a completely different side of the hobby. You know, there's so many things you could do. You know, you could be an active member at a museum. You could be a paid member of a museum and also work for a Class 1 railroad. You could be a member of a huge model railroad club. You could be a member of a small model railroad club. You could own your own pieces of rolling stock or equipment. You could do live steam even. And there's just so many things across the gauntlet and various age ranges as well. You know, I've met a lot of great people just from being a rail fan, and really it didn't take long once I finally did meet the right people, because I've met a whole lot of the wrong kind of people in this hobby as well, to sort of get me started and getting to know people, because growing up I had no friends who shared my interest in school. I was the only one in my entire school system, it seemed, who had a passion for railroading and model railroading, and I was very much looked down upon by both students and teachers. So I had no friends who shared the hobby, so I ended up having to morph my interests in some cases to get friends, which looking back now, you know, had my current self been in that situation, I never would have done that, because, you know, I've just learned to do my own thing now because I'm too old to deal with high school BS, and I just want to do what I want to do, which is play with my trains.
So now with the Metra SD70s, what is your favorite SD70 that you own?
This one is tricky. Obviously, I like the 4980, which was my very first SD70 that I got, the SD70M, and that one's still here. I don't use it very much. It's actually packed away right now, but I do bring it out now and then to run it. The 4141 and the 1943 are obviously very good models, and they're very much fan favorites of both other people and myself. I like my NS 1982 SD70 ACE. There's too many to choose from.
When are we going to get to use your HO model of the TVRM RDC to recreate the NYC jet-propelled RDC?
You think you're funny, do you?
What is your opinion of high hood units?
High hood units are interesting. They're very cool in my opinion. And I used to see a lot of them back in the day when most of them were still in service. Obviously, Norfolk Southern had a lot of SD40-2s, GP50s, GP38-2s, and a few other stragglers that still had high noses on them from the Southern Railway and the Norfolk and Western. So yeah, I really like high hood units. I even have a number board from a high hood SD40, the 1623, mounted up on my wall. So yeah, I really do like high hood units, and I'm glad to see that a lot of them have been getting either new lives on other railroads, or in the case of the ones at TVRM, preserved and given other jobs, but still around today. TVRM's got 4 GP38-2s on the roster now. They've got Tag 80, the 5000, which is in original Southern Railway colors, the 5109, which is in TVRM paint, and soon the 5044 will also be in TVRM paint. And then also you've got the 3170, which is the SD40. Now granted, that one's out of service right now, but that's 5 original Southern Railway high hood units, unless we not forget the 2594, the GP30. So that brings it up to 6. So the fact that high hood locomotives have gotten attention in the preservation world should really speak something that both myself and a lot of other people appreciate them, and they're really, really nice.
What are your thoughts on the Central of Georgia 509's restoration?
To be honest, I haven't really heard much about the 509's restoration, and maybe it will take off, maybe it will be great, and maybe it'll crap the bed. I have no idea. There are a lot of things within the preservation world that have done both, so I'll definitely be keeping my ear open and see how it works out.
What are your favorite models in your collection?
Favoritism. It's a bad thing, even in model railroading.
What are your favorite engines at TVRM?
Favorite engine at TVRM? Well, obviously I like the 4501, I like the 630 and the 610. I pretty much like all the steam locomotives. Diesel locomotive-wise, very partial to the 1829. I also like the 8677 and the 69, the 2 Alco RSD1s. I like the Jeeps that they've been putting in service that I previously talked about. Again, there's too much to choose from.
What is your favorite steam engine?
This one is tricky. I like just about everything. I'm sort of an omnivore when it comes to this hobby. Obviously, like a lot of people, I love the 611, the 1218, 4501. A lot of the big name excursion locomotives. I like Western Maryland 6 up at the Cass Scenic Railroad. I like the 765. I also like the Pennsylvania Railroad M1Bs. I like the T1s, the Pennsy T1s. I like the, the Q2, the one prototype. I like the S2, of course. Again, and that's just East Coast steam locomotives. West Coast steam locomotives, even further expansion. Obviously, the Challengers and the big boys. The Santa Fe 484s. The Union Pacific 484s. The Blue Goose, Santa Fe Blue Goose, obviously. I like the Skookum. Skookum is a major favorite of mine, and I'm glad to see that thing finally returned to operation. What else? The Daylight, 4449, and I also like the 4460 as well. That's at the museum in St. Louis. I also like the Western Pacific GS64s, the GS6 variants. Those were really cool. It's a shame that only a tender from one of those has been preserved. There's just too many great steam locomotives out there that have been built, and that's just domestic ones, United States ones. If we hop over the border to Canada, we've got, the 2816, the 2860, the Royal Hudsons. I also like the CP Selkirk 210-4s. If we were to hop over to England, I like the Gresley Pacifics. I like the A3s. The Flying Scotsman and stuff like that. There's just way too many great steam locomotives out there in the world.
The Nougat Rail fan is just better in all regards. Not a question, but a statement.
I'm going to remember this.
What famous steam engine do you want to see the most?
Famous steam locomotive I want to see in person. That is an interesting one for sure, because there are a lot that I have not seen. Probably the one that's on the top of the priority list is, now granted, I am not going to the dedication and the 150th anniversary celebration, but I would love to see the 4014 when it's restored. Like I said, I'm not going to the main event because I don't have the money for it right now, but 4014 is definitely a big one. Other engines would probably be CP 2816. I know it's in storage right now, but at least it is in good shape. Other ones, probably the Daylight. I've never seen the Daylight in person, so that would be cool. And maybe even when it's finished, Santa Fe 2926.
Why you no come to GSMR for Trains and Almighty 1702? Asking for a friend.
Sorry, what was the question again?
What NS Heritage unit is your most or least favorite?
To be honest, I don't even have a least favorite of the NS Heritage units. I think they're all neat in their own way. But there are ones that don't do much for me. For example, I think the Delaware Lackawanna and Western and the Erie are probably the ones that don't do much for me. I still like them, don't get me wrong. Also, as far as favorites go, being from Georgia, I obviously love the Central of Georgia unit. I like the Interstate and the original NS. And I also like the Savannah and Atlanta and the New York Central and the Central Railroad of New Jersey. The Central Railroad of New Jersey is probably my top favorite because I just love the orange and the blue.
How dare you disrespect the almighty and scale gods?
Charlene, have you been letting Teeny hang out with Fields again?
Don't be looking at me. This is your video.
He's your personality!
He's a toy!
Guys, stop breaking the fourth wall. Whoa!
Can it, you little hacky sack?
Whoa! Aw, shucks.
Now that that's out of the way, next question, please.
Have you heard of Rapido Trains, and have you seen any of their videos?
Who hasn't heard of Rapido Trains? I love watching their stuff, but the thing is, I do O-scale. I still have some HO and N-scale pieces, but I am predominantly O-scale. So unless Rapido breaks into the O-scale market, which I really think both them and Scale Trains ought to consider that, then it's probably not going to be likely that I'll purchase many of their products. But if they break into the O-scale market, I really think they'll give Lionel and MTH a run for their money. Scale Trains as well.
4501, green or black?
That's my answer!
Steam or diesel?
Wow. I've never heard anyone say electric like that before.
Are you coming to Iowa anytime between May and July for the Iowa Interstate 6988 excursions?
I'm probably not going to be coming to the Iowa Interstate excursions simply because funding, you need money to travel. So, probably not going to be coming to that trip. However, I do have some plans for trips in the works, but that is a subject for much later down the road. But travel plans are coming in hopefully the near future, financial situation permitting.
What is your favorite Railfan video or Railfan channel?
Favorite Railfan video? Well, if we're talking about a production company, Pentrex is obviously the #1 favorite, closely followed by Green Frog. I have a lot of videos from them. I also have a lot of Trains Magazine DVDs from like the Ultimate Railroading DVD series, which is basically rehashes of some of the 1990s on-location tapes, which is perfectly fine with me because I really wanted those tapes as a kid, but my mom would never order them for me because they were a little on the pricey side, and they're still pricey even today. But as far as a YouTube channel goes, a lot of my original inspiration to even post train videos came from Distant Signal Productions, aka Danny Harmon, and he's still very much active today. And some of his videos, in my opinion, well, all of his videos really, are probably the most professionally done Railfan videos I have ever seen, outside of a major company like Pentrex or Green Frog. For an independent individual who makes Railfan videos, Danny Harmon is at the top of my list. Plus, I got to meet him a few years ago, and he's just such a cool guy, and yeah, I have a lot of respect for the man.
What other hobbies do you have?
My other hobbies? Well, there's music for a start. Music is probably right up there, tied for the #1 spot with trains. I've always been a big music fan, primarily rock, metal, and blues, but I do listen to a little bit of everything. I also like to go and sing karaoke. I usually get my fix once every week, maybe 2, at a place in Chattanooga that I go to. And at one time I did audition for American Idol, but I didn't get past the first round, which, you know what, it is what it is. And obviously, and also, if you want to, if you want to go way back in time to one of my earlier uploads on my YouTube channel, you can actually see me doing a thing at Disney World for what was the American Idol experience at that time. And in that case, I actually won the show, which was really, really cool. But tragically, we could not move on. I couldn't move on to the finale because my group that I was with was leaving that night. So tragically, I could not finish the show and potentially win. If I had won the show, I would have gotten myself a gold ticket that basically would have gotten me to the front of any actual American Idol audition anywhere in the country. So, but you know what? It is what it is. It sucks looking back on it, but maybe one day I'll get my time in the spotlight, but then again, maybe I won't. And if I don't, it won't be the end of the world. As far as other hobbies, there's Pokemon, of course. I really like Pokemon. I also like Lego stuff. I have a lot of Lego pieces. I actually have a few Lego trains that I haven't shown on camera before, but I do have a few pieces, including a custom job. I also like reading books. I have a lot of books on history. I love historic shipwrecks as well. You know, I'm a big fan of Dr. Ballard's research into the Titanic and the Bismarck, as well as a few other ships. There's just too many other, the list goes on endlessly, and I could bore you guys to death with it, honestly. But suffice to say, I have a lot of interests.
How much foam could a foamer foam if a foamer could foam foam?
That much.
If you had one day to go back in any time in history for rail fanning, when would it be?
This is a very, very good question. Time machine to go back in time to any period I want. Honestly, I would probably go back to either the early 1950s or maybe even the early 1970s, because for the 1950s, obviously you've still got steam locomotives everywhere, there's some early diesels showing up on the scene, streamlined passenger trains, lots of passenger trains everywhere, and it was basically the golden age of American railroading. So, sure, I'd love to go back to that time period if I could. As far as the 1970s, that's when you had a lot of excursions going on with steam locomotives. Also, you were in the early years of Amtrak at that point, and I'm a big Amtrak fan. So I would love to go back in time and see some of the SDP-40Fs, the early F-40s, and the tons and tons of E units and F units. Plus, I would also like to be able to see early Conrail operations around 1976, when the blue paint hadn't been put into place yet. So there was still a lot of paint schemes from Penn Central, the Erie-Lackawanna, the Reading, the Lehigh Valley, all still in existence. Not to mention, you had a lot of early operations. I say early operations. Early Amtrak operations on the Northeast Corridor. And you had Conrail freight operations that were still using electric locomotives at that time. So, yeah, that would be a fantastic time frame to go back to, in my personal opinion.
Is it nap time yet?
Yes, it is. Bye.